Crowds gather in Upper Manhattan as former President Trump visits a bodega.
This is the moment Mr. Trump arrived tonight. People lined up along 139th and Broadway as he made his way inside the Hamilton Heights bodega to meet with Jose Alba. Alba is the bodega worker who fatally stabbed a man in July of 2022 in a case of self-defense.
On Tuesday, he used a Harlem bodega as a backdrop to slam Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg for being what he calls soft on crimes that matter.
Without a doubt, very much supported here in Harlem.
If there was ever any time in the last 200 years that an independent candidate could win the presidency, it's now. Even the traditional mainstream media admits that 2/3 of Americans don't want to see a contest between President Trump and President Biden alone. My opponents are worried, which is why you're seeing so many dirty tricks attacks and condemnation of me by both President Biden and President Trump and the Republican and Democratic parties. Today, for the first time in American history, self-identified independents outnumber both Republican and Democratic voters. And independents favor me over President Biden or President Trump. I was particularly interested in a recent poll by NBC, which never gives me favorable treatment, but which acknowledged that 34% of Americans would consider voting for me. And in a three-way race, 34% is enough to win the election. Currently, polls show that about 20% of Americans have never heard of me and don't know that I'm running for president. So we have some work to do to get the word out about my campaign, but we also have a tremendous amount of headroom. Virtually everybody in our country knows that President Biden and President Trump are running, so they don't have much room to grow their supporters. And very few people are likely to change their minds about who among those two is the lesser of two evils. And keep in mind that when pollsters publish their surveys, they exclude those people who they consider unlikely voters. Based on historical records, they consider young people highly unlikely to vote. But what would happen if young people actually became excited about a candidate, as has happened in the past? They could provide a decisive margin of victory to my campaign. During the civil rights movement and the Vietnam era, young people who had never voted before in great numbers suddenly began voting in overwhelming numbers, and they changed the national debate. And guess what? Young people support me at a much higher margin, and they support either President Trump or President Biden. Young people are disgusted by the division. They're dismayed by the forever wars. They understand that they're not going to live the American dream, that they're not going to get their own homes, and they want somebody who's listening to them, and I'm that somebody. I'm going to end the forever wars, and I'm going to use the peace dividend to make sure that our young people get into homes and that they can have equity so that they can pursue their entrepreneurial impulses and rebuild America and small business in this country again. I can win the presidency, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. We have an FEC filing deadline on April 30th. That's very, very important to our campaign. Let's show the political establishment that Americans this time around are not going to be manipulated again by fear. They're going to vote for a candidate that they actually want to see as president. Please contribute to my campaign as much as you can. There is no more important time than now to donate.
Donald Trump's surprise visit to a construction site. Hundreds of cheering union members turned out to meet the former president. It was quite a scene.
These are hardworking New Yorkers, okay, union members who have been working on this big construction site here in Midtown Manhattan near Trump Tower.
I think these maybe were Democrats, but for me, they're a Republican. We built a lot of great buildings in the city with these people, and they've given me great support. They're very, very talented people. They don't get the credit for it. They have very few people can do what they do.
These union workers who are here to talk to the president are paying the price of failed economic policies currently in the country.
And you heard in New York City chants of "We want Trump."
We love Trump. We love Trump. We love Trump.
A lot of people are talking about how unusual it is to see so many Trump supporters in Manhattan at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. Does that surprise you?
No, absolutely not.
President Trump is leading Joe Biden 3-1 on my presidential poll out of my 9,000 members.
Trump's turn again.
What's your message to Joe Biden?
You. We're a very patriotic group, and we love our country, and we want the best for America.
We're right now fighting Democrats, Republicans, and I don't think it's Democrats and Republicans. I think that's a stage show. I think it is the elites and the people.
It's a populace and like a class war, like you say. Populism is easily hijacked by demagogues.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be dark.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be fascism or Nazism.
Yes.
It was the populist movement in our country in 1903 that got rid of the Gilded Age, and we got the 40-hour work week. We ended child labor. We got women the vote. We got the Sherman Antitrust Act passed, and we made corporations to pay taxes for the first time. We're seeing a revolution in this country that's gonna happen. You can't have a situation, 57% of the people in this country can't put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. 54% of the people in this country are not making enough money to pay for basic human needs. And there's going to be a revolution, and is it going to be captured by dark regressive forces, or are we going to be able to keep it as an expression of idealism? We're impoverishing the oceans. You say there's 100 million sharks killed a year.
Yeah, over 100 million sharks killed every single year, yet fewer than 10 fatalities. And they're like the doctors of the ocean, so it's so important to protect them. And everything has its balance and its place in the ecosystem, and that does impact human lives as well. And there's really nothing quite like being in the presence of a shark. They have this instinctual, sort of commanding presence. And that is beautiful to experience.
I've watched a decline in sharks over my lifetime. They were much more common when I was a kid. And the populations now are down to about 10% that they have been historically, and almost all of that comes from one industry, which is shark finning, to fulfill the demand for shark fin soup in China.
So the demand does come from China, but so many countries around the world are killing sharks and shipping fins over there. And that's why it's so important that the U.S. doesn't participate in that global fin trade. It's just a wasteful thing. And then on top of that, it's the devastation that it's causing to fisheries and coral reefs. You're a great diver. It's really, really impressive.
Thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Why did the price of housing go up? Because we spent $8 trillion on wars and $16 trillion on COVID, which we didn't have. They print money, which caused the price of everything to go up. 2 years ago, the average cost of a house in this country was $215,000. Today it's $400,000. There's three giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. They also own 89% of the S&P 500. They've now decided to buy every single family home in America. If they stay on the current trajectory, they will own 60% of the homes in this country, single family homes, by 2030. Your kids do not have a chance to buy that home because they can't outcompete BlackRock. I'm going to change the tax code to make it unprofitable for those companies to compete against your children for housing. I'm going to make a mortgage available to Americans at 3% interest. I'm going to finance those mortgages by selling tax-free bonds on the open market, available to first-time home buyers who will live in that community, who will work in that community. We need to create housing for teachers to keep the best teachers in our schools.